Good morning. My name is Phil Asgian, a member of Westminster's Social Justice Team, and we are pleased to welcome you and students and teachers from the University of St. Thomas and their Aquinas Honors Seminar, Race and Place. This class is an exploration of the intersection between race and infrastructure, specifically transportation and housing infrastructure here in the Twin Cities. Students will be presenting their semester-long projects where they propose an infrastructure project that will increase equity in the transportation system of the Twin Cities. Shortly, teachers Ora Wharton-Beck and Rita Letterly from the Department of Educational Leadership and Department of Civil Engineering will be providing us with information on the Honors Seminar, and then the students will be presenting their findings and recommendations. A couple logistical items. For those in the Meisel room, when we get to the Q&A, please raise your hand and I'll bring a mic to you so that everyone, including those on the live stream, can hear. And for those on the live stream, we'll be monitoring the live stream chat, and you can put your comments in there as well. We do ask that you hold questions and comments until the students are done presenting. We've tried to really organize our time, but we have a lot of material to present, so important to get through that. As part of our ongoing effort to promote respectful conversations in our community, our team has established guidelines for the social justice forums that you now see on the screen. And this morning, I'd just like to highlight the second point here, encouraging curiosity as we encounter new ideas. We benefit from asking generally curious or clarifying questions. And you can see the guidelines on here. I'll lead us in a short prayer before we get started here. Let us pray. Holy One, God of justice, breathe into us today a spirit of curiosity and humility. Help us engage with mindfulness, following the lead of voices from our community. Guide our speech and self-awareness so that, we may honor the divine in all people. Amen. And so now I'll hand it off to Dr. Ora Wharton-Beck.
Thank you, Phil, and good morning, everyone. I am Dr. Ora Wharton-Beck, an associate professor in the School of Education here at the University of St. Thomas. This semester, Dr. Rita Letterly and I co-taught a class on infrastructure and race. In other words, race and place. So basically, this course studies the intersectionality of housing and transportation here in the United States. And our goal is to provide students with a grounded understanding of how you can use a critical lens to look at race, class, and economics. This semester, we used and examined 4 themes. 1, architectural exclusion. 2, the arts. 3, the engineering design process. And 4, the social issues related to race and communities of color. This class uses the metaphors of bridges and highways to look at and examine how infrastructure projects and housing dramatically impacted and changed the culture of established communities. In order to do that, we used case studies along with textbooks such as The Color of Law and plays, for example, Lorraine Hansberry's A Raisin in the Sun and The Highwaymen. We also use excerpts from peer-reviewed articles and photo archives. In order to bring this issue to bear. We visited the Rondo community, which is in St. Paul. We needed to do that in order to understand the impact of redlining and federal and local policies, again, that dramatically impacted well-established communities. We asked subject matter experts from governmental and non-governmental organizations to help students to understand what really happened in these neighborhoods. What we did was critical. We asked a representative from the University of Minnesota's mapping project to come and actually show students how to examine deeds that had racial covenants. We also invited a representative from the Chicago Low Income Trust Fund to understand how you can reverse the negative impact of federal and local decisions that destroyed communities. I believe you're going to be inspired and challenged by what you see and hear this morning. Our students have put forth a great deal of effort. Their intellectual curiosity knows no bounds. And it is my pleasure and honor to turn the microphone over to my dear colleague and friend, Dr. Rita Letterly from the Department of Civil Engineering. Thank you for being here this morning.
Bring it up a little bit. All right. Thank you, Dr. Wartenbeck. My name is Rita Letterly, and I'm an associate professor in the Department of Civil Engineering at St. Thomas. And today you're going to hear our students present their final class projects. So as Dr. Wartenbeck explained, our students have spent the semester studying the intersection of transportation and housing, policy, race, and how they all intersect, often to the detriment of marginalized groups. And our final project was meant to help the students explore how the transportation system can be changed for the better, to overcome previous injustices that still leave a legacy in our cities today. So this project was divided into two parts. In the first part, students were encouraged to think big and bold, to propose a transportation infrastructure project that would increase equity within the transportation infrastructure of the Twin Cities for historically marginalized or underrepresented groups. And so some students focused on a single group or area, other students were broader. So they had this big idea, and they didn't have any constraints. And then, once they had already selected their idea, we introduced the constraints. We brought them into the real world and said, great, now we're going to put our engineers' hats on, and you actually have to make it happen. And that's where a lot of times great ideas bump into reality. And so what happens and how do you make that work? So for the second part of the project, the students had to look at the challenges that they would face if they actually wanted to make their project proposal a reality. So this is an interdisciplinary honors seminar. It is not an engineering course. Most of the students here are not engineers. So the engineering analysis they did is very high level. I told them at the start of the semester we would not have them do math. Okay, so they're not doing any math. There's no calculus prerequisite to this class. But the goal of this class is to introduce students to the idea of engineering, to the discipline of engineering, to get them to see how engineering constraints will shape their project, how someone might have a really cool idea and it doesn't work in reality. You have to make changes to make it actually feasible. And so what does that look like? So today we're going to be sharing a little bit of both parts of those projects with you. So these projects are going to span a wide range of ideas, but they are all aimed at making changes to the current infrastructure of our city with the goal of a more inclusive community. And they give us an idea of ways that we could invest in each other's futures for the common good. So with that, I will turn it over to our first group, and thank you very much.
Hi everyone, this is our transportation project by Maggie, Nora, Courtney, and Ishmael. So for our project, we propose restructuring elements of Hamlin Avenue North. We propose adding 2 roundabouts to replace the traffic lights that are currently there. The first roundabout will be located at the intersection of Hamlin Avenue North and St. Anthony Avenue, and the other will be located at the intersection of the Target entrance and Hamlin Avenue North. We also propose implementing a crosswalk at 459 Hamlin Avenue North, which is the first Target entrance. Additionally, we propose adding a bike lane on the east side of Hamlin Avenue. We will implement this by removing the road verge. We also propose an enhancement of the public transit facilities. We will do this by adding heated bus shelters with seating at the stops located by both of the proposed roundabouts. Currently, these stops are just assigned, so our proposed improvements will make these stops more inclusive and welcoming to riders.
Here's a look at where we're implementing the project. So the first one with the Target entrance in Hamlin Avenue, that's where we'll be having the roundabouts. The St. Anthony Avenue and Hamlin Avenue one is right off the I-94. And then there's 459 Hamlin Avenue over there where we'll be adding the crosswalk.
Then this is just a before and after of what the improvements would look like. So we can see how the yellow is where the roundabouts would be implemented. That's at the St. Anthony and Hamlin and the Hamlin and Target Avenue entrance, or Target entrance. Then where the red is where the bus shelter will be added. There'll be another one close to the second roundabout on the bottom. And then the added crosswalk is where those yellow lines are. And that is it.
So our choice of location emphasizes our commitment to equity, given the significant demographic of people of color and low-income individuals, as well as us feeling that the area was subject to neglect and inequalities. We also understand that being a person of color or a low-income individual doesn't exclude you from having other marginalized identities, such as being a person, such as having a disability. So that may cause these inequalities to be felt harder. Our project is a deliberate step towards equity. Our project is a deliberate step towards allocation of resources to a population that often faces great inequalities and lower investment. So adding stuff such as heated shelters, ADA compliant crosswalks, and cleanliness of transit stops will cater to the needs of underrepresented groups who are often non-choice riders as well.
So we have some constraints with our project. So the first one is space limitations. So right now the Hamlin Avenue, the width of it is around 70 feet, but roundabouts need to be a little bigger, at least around 100 feet. So with these restrictions, we need to change part of that road to ensure it hits at 100 feet width. So at each 4 corners of like the intersections, we'll be expanding the roundabouts to like the boulevard or also the parking lot or concrete part of that sidewalk to manage that. We also have traffic flow management. How do we ensure that traffic flow is smooth, especially when it's right off the highway of I-94? But one thing is that roundabouts are designed to reduce vehicle speeds and affect the overall traffic flow. And it's found that an intersection can reduce vehicle delays by 20%, helping that. Also, we have weather adaptation. So as you know, Minnesota is pretty cold. We have a lot of snow and ice, so we need to ensure that there's regular snow and ice removal from these roads to maintain safe driving conditions, and then also making sure that the crosswalks have high visibility markings on it so drivers can see where the crosswalk is when people are walking across, and with those, making sure that the sign has LED lights so it's visible in snowy conditions. And then lastly, making sure that the bus stops are insulated to protect passengers from the cold and wind. We also have some budgetary constraints, so we have to think about the material costs, labor costs, and the utility relocation costs, and also thinking about the long run costs like maintenance of roads and making sure the roads are being managed in the winter, but we're currently finalizing those numbers. And then also accessibility standards, so making sure those crosswalks are safe for pedestrian movement, so that's just adding curb ramps there and having painted crosswalks so it has high visibility for pedestrians and drivers. And then also, lastly, community impact. So with this project, we have to involve the community in the planning process, talk to them and gather their opinions, and we need to understand their needs and concerns to make sure that this project is positively impacting them.
So we have a few ways to avoid unintended consequences, namely 3 things, which would be a direct community engagement, to ensure anti-gentrification measures, and to build an inclusive and adaptive designs. So our plan to have direct community engagement would be listening sessions with translators in multiple languages and hearing adaptations for those with hard of hearing. And then we would also be asking how to best meet the needs of the members of the community without inadvertently pushing them out, ensuring that implementations are genuinely beneficial. Then a way to ensure that anti-gentrification happens is that we would attempt to provide protections for affordable housing through things like subsidies or rent control. And cities that have succeeded in this have successfully safeguarded affordable housing. And then we would also plan to establish a community land trust. This just ensures that the people who live in the surrounding area are able to feel a little bit of ownership over the land that has been newly remodeled. Lastly, we'd build with inclusive and adaptive design in mind. We want to ensure that the goals to meet the community avoid architectural exclusion. This would be done by implementing wider bike lanes, crosswalks with safety features like lights and signs, and bus stops that are heated and have seats, ramps, and handrails. All of these measures are just to ensure that all of the spaces are inclusive to the members of the public. Thank you.
Hello, so this is our proposal for Cedar Riverside and how we can increase equity in this area. So Cedar Riverside is a neighborhood in Minneapolis, which is pretty isolated from the rest of the metro area. And it's isolated specifically by Highway 35W, which kind of like wraps around it, and then 95, which goes right beneath it. The current means of transportation that lead into the rest of the city that don't require car aren't that great. Currently there's only a biking and walking path which goes over the highway, which isn't very safe or comfortable to use, and it also has the light rail systems, only of which one has a stop near. The green line has a very far away stop where you need to walk roughly about half a mile, which isn't very convenient, especially in the snow. And the blue line is the only one. It's only about like a few hundred feet from the main community area. Yeah, that's the situation in Cedar Riverside right now. We took inspiration from the Rondo neighborhood on how they were going to reconnect their community over their own highway, which split up their community, and we decided to build a small land bridge to help make it easier for people to go from the metro area to Cedar Riverside and make it a lot safer. We saw that there was a bike path and then also a bike path and a walking path, and the train lines all kind of create a small overhang. So we decided to just expand that and create land bridge, which not only can house a bike path, walking path, but also several small businesses to help increase the, to kind of create a small town and help increase, tourism and economic growth, as well as more stops for buses and light rails.
So our project is dedicated to the Cedar Riverside community, and it focuses on connecting it to the broader metro area in Minneapolis. Our focus is to ensure that pedestrians and other commuters will have easier access moving back and forth between their home and downtown Minneapolis, as well as feel connected as a community. The land bridge will also bring more space to potential Somali-owned businesses because we know that that is the main demographic in the area. So our aim is to increase equity, and by implementing a land bridge over this area and adding an extra bus stop, the total amount of the foot traffic will be increased. The land bridge will provide the opportunity to add businesses along the walkway, essentially increasing merchandising from an economic standpoint. This will also promote equity from the perspective of future investments and ownership due to the historical underfunding of resources in this area. And then for our logistics, the project will be located over 35W between Curry Park and 13th Avenue, which is located behind the U.S. Bank Stadium. Some engineering constraints that could arise would be over the exits when we're constructing and also creating leeway for importers to deliver goods for the new businesses. Problems could also arise when moving the green line slightly to make more room for either businesses or just more walking area on the land bridge. We will work around these problems by moving the green line and building the adjusted track for it before we start the construction so that it can run uninterrupted during the actual construction of the land bridge. Yeah.
All right. So to furthermore explain how this project will affect the people of this community, I'd like to speak to its prospective impact on its adjacent neighbors. As we know it, the West Bank area of Minneapolis has become home to a growing number of migrants in the past 20 years. For preface, the Cedar Riverside area is mainly composed of Black, Indigenous, and other groups of color, with these groups making up around 73% of the demographic according to the Minnesota Compass. Additionally, 41% of that group identifies themselves as foreign-born residents, highlighting this area's diversity and significant presence of immigrant communities. As this area has grown to become home to a flourishing Somali community, the emphasis on addressing community needs for economic inclusion, stability, affordable housing, and resources for substance use, and et cetera, would be substantial to the development of this project. By insertion of the land bridge, we'd encounter high volumes of traffic, not necessarily by car, but more so by foot, as this would instantly grant direct access to businesses along the pathway, allowing for a significant increase of productivity through new customers and residents. As mentioned before, our project plans to accommodate a new light rail stop for residents in order for them to have leverage to like a connecting point. Lastly, to counteract the unintended consequences of this project, we'd address the growing concerns surrounding gentrification by acknowledging how improving the infrastructure could make the area appeal to new residents and potentially cause high property values and appreciation rates for rentals, leading to displacement for those who cannot afford to stay. Through many community conversations, our plan would be to use their voices as we implement policies that work in tandem to the Minneapolis 2040 plan, and adapt a similar policy to that of St. Paul's with a rent stabilization plan to ensure that current residents continue to have that resource of affordable housing and overall limiting rent increases in the area.
Hello, I'm Ingrid Watson. This is our Snelling Midway project proposal.
I'm Nadia Barnes.
I'm Tidiane Kone.
let's get started. So the summary of our project is that Allianz Field was finished. Our summary, yes, okay. So Allianz Field was finished being built in 2016, and actually the development was never fully complete. You can see in that image there's a lot of empty land, and while it was originally proposed to help the area, it's actually harmed the area because it was never fully finished, giving the area kind of an unfit vibe. So it also means that the area is not very pedestrian friendly. So what we want to do is remove the median that runs down the middle of Snelling Avenue, expand the sidewalks, and add a pedestrian bridge. So overall, this will help the area feel more pedestrian friendly and let people kind of support the businesses along that street. So that big red section is the area of the median that we plan to remove. We plan to use that extra space to expand the sidewalks. There's also a fence running down the middle of that median to prevent pedestrians from crossing the street at all, probably because there isn't really a way for pedestrians to cross right now. That's where the pedestrian bridge will come in. That will allow people to move more freely around. There's also, at the top of that screenshot, that's where the light rail is. There's also several bus stations. So all of this will help people access that public transportation easier. So our project will increase equity by supporting marginalized groups, by helping people who walk or use public transit be able to better access that, as well as removing fences and medians to help people freely move around the area, both residents and visitors to the Allianz Field. It will benefit the community by allowing people to actually use those storefronts, because right now a lot of those storefronts aren't really getting a lot of foot traffic. And there will be a better focus on safety for people, not just cars getting in and out of the arena.
Okay, now we are going to talk about unintended consequences. And such a project, for example, we can worry about the width of a sidewalk impacting traffic, and this is something we considered into the project as to pick a width that will not impact traffic much. Also, I think that asking for the people's opinion will help kind of know what they would like the project to do, so that we don't do stuff that does not actually help the people, but that we want to do something that is productive for the people. So getting the people's opinion can help also in that. I think we'll avoid gentrification, because that project will bring the people together by widening the sidewalk, pushing the people to walk instead of drive, and bringing the community together. And in the end, it will not impact business performances, as it will bring more people to walk around and to access business more easily. Also, we have taken a look at the impact on marginalized people, and the access to pedestrian will improve pedestrian access to the place for racial minorities and low-income individuals. Will also help the people with disability, because it will make them easy to circulate into the place. And also adding, making it easy to circulate will help avoid accident, as people, it will be easy for them to cross and circulate around.
Okay, so the impact on the majority of people, this can have really positive impacts on the community by, pushing people to walk more and drive less, which can be better for the environment and better for people's overall health. The safety and efficient crossing, this will make it, more safe for people to get to where they need to be. So if they need to walk to work, they can feel safer doing that with more crosswalks implemented, wider sidewalks, more pedestrian-friendly areas available in the community. More access to local businesses, that will be better for the local communities and the neighborhoods surrounding to get to where they need to get groceries, where they need to, do their everyday errands, go to work, and that'll draw more attention for the businesses as well. So the improvement in the sense of community will be good for the local surrounding neighborhoods. It'll feel less marginalized and more inclusive, and not make them feel like they're in a low-income community, and it'll make it feel more like a community overall. And then the improvement of comfort and safety by using streetlights will help people by feeling safer where they need to go, if it's at night, if they're leaving work late, all of that. So the constraints which exist in the way of the project are needing to block off the roads for a little bit. So we thought it would be best to do this in summertime because if it's in winter, this can take longer. There will be more time needed to block off roads where people might need to get to work, or if there's events at Allianz Field going on and drivers having to figure out new routes, maybe having to block off roads and open new ones. Keeping accesses to businesses and making sure that they have enough business to stay open, keeping customers in there. How many resources do we have, and is it realistic to implement? Keeping good car traffic while making the sidewalk wide. It's important to not let congestion, block off the roads too much. It should be doable during summer and beginning of fall, but like I said, winter might make it harder on everybody around. And the pedestrian bridge might interfere with the buildings close to the sidewalk.
So how will we work around the constraint? I would say for the first one, as to access businesses and to not block off the road, it would be good to provide path for the pedestrian to be able to circulate on either side of the road. And for cars who used to take that path, it would be good to propose an alternative path for them. Also, for the feasibility of a project, I would say if you don't have funding, you cannot make any project. So getting help from the government and also maybe investors can help. Also getting the city authorization, getting a construction company also. All these will be stuff that can help achieve the project. Also, as we talked about the width of the sidewalk impacting the traffic, it would be I would say a vital constraint to calculate the width that will not impact the traffic. Also, as for the cold and the winter time, considering on the length of the road and the temperature in summer, all these, we think that it will be quite doable into summertime, 3-month kind of length. And we also worry about the bridge impacting the buildings around and stuff. It will be good to design a bridge also that will not extend much on the sidewalk to impact people walking around and the buildings around also. Thank you.
So this is our presentation, Equity in Transportation by Colin, Zuzu, and Caitlin.
So our project is also proposed in the Cedar Riverside neighborhood in Minneapolis. We are proposing a removal and a redesign of the section of I-94 whose construction on the south side of this neighborhood during a time of redlining and segregation effectively isolated this neighborhood from the rest of Minneapolis. We are suggesting to elevate the section of I-94 to the current level of the 20th and 25th Avenue South bridges that currently run above it. We're proposing to raise the segment from Cedar Avenue to Riverside Avenue. Additionally, we are also looking to connect 21st Street and 22nd Avenue South using stoplights and crosswalks at these intersections. We're proposing for the redesign portion of this to replace that section of the highway with a 2-lane, 2-way road and use the extra space for bike lanes and sidewalks for the community to use. As shown in the graphic below, you can see that our plan does not include infringing any further upon the community, but rather adding some green space for them to utilize. This added green space will make it more walkable and more transit-friendly, transforming this neighborhood into a cultural hub that facilitates movement between the residents and the broader Minneapolis community. Looking at these maps, up top you can see that Cedar Riverside is fully enclosed on all sides. It is confined by highways I-94, I-35W, with the river on the other side. Historically, this has made it very difficult for the residents of this community to be integrated and access opportunities in the rest of Minneapolis. The map below gives a closer look into what our project is proposing. The yellow shows that section of the highway from Cedar to Riverside Avenue that we are planning on redesigning. The purple shows the bridges as well as the streets that we are planning on reconnecting with the highway.
Okay, so this neighborhood has a long history of displacement and segregation, dating all the way back to the University of Minnesota's West Bank expansion in the 1950s and 60s. This area has also been viewed as a safe haven for immigrant communities, and because of that, it was labeled a slum, meaning that during redlining and zoning, the city decided that it would be an okay place to build interstates I-35 West and I-94. Currently, because of these major roads and the amount of traffic on these highways, there's a large amount of pollution, high crime rates, and there's a lot of negative stereotypes connected with the area. Okay. So our plan to, so we plan to work with stakeholders and like the University of Minnesota and other local businesses, and we want to make sure we are righting the wrongs and not creating more damage to this area. Some other issues might be language. Because this is a large immigrant community, we want to make sure we have translators, interpreters, and people from the Minnesota Department of Human Resources for those with disabilities to make sure everything is equally accessible. We also have to focus on redirecting the high amount of traffic. I believe 13,000 cars use this interstate daily. And we also want to make sure that we're using the space wisely and not wasting any space.
The potential pros and potential cons for our project. The potential pros really revolve around addressing the needs of this area. So for example, making it easier for emergency vehicles to access an area with a high crime rate. Also, reducing debris and exhaust from vehicles flowing into the neighborhood. Increasing space for bikers and pedestrians as well. Increasing access to jobs for citizens by building businesses along the new space the removal of the highway will create. Cons to our project really revolve around an overflow of traffic into the area, high-speed vehicles, and lower safety for bikers and walkers. To ensure that avoiding consequences of our project, we want to ensure communication with the community, use translators with the high immigrant population, avoid further gentrification and architectural exclusion, and find ways to redirect the overflow of traffic that will come into the city from our project.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Annika.
And my name is Srija.
I'm Kiana.
And our focus that we would like to share with you today is creating equitable city planning solutions that address long-standing environmental issues, enhance community well-being, and promote sustainable development. Together, we'll explore how reimagining the East Phillips neighborhood of Minneapolis isn't just about transforming a physical space, it's about empowering a community and building a healthier, more inclusive future for generations to come.
The East Phillips neighborhood faces unique challenges due to its demographics. Over 80% of residents are people of color, with nearly 1 in 3 being foreign-born, reflecting a large immigrant community. The poverty rate of the East Phillips neighborhood is 28%, which is over 3 times the state average. 1/4 of East Phillips workers lack access to a vehicle. Instead, many rely on alternative transportation, with 14% using public transit, and 19% using bikes, walking, or other methods.
Bike riding is a commonly used transportation method in this community. However, the infrastructure is poor and hazardous. Bike lanes often tend to be narrow, unavailable, unsafe when biking along vehicles. Currently, the bike boulevard on 17th Street is limited to a one-way northbound traffic, and we are trying to enhance the accessibility and safety of cyclists by proposing the additional dedicated bike lanes, wider sidewalks, and buffer landscaping on Bulletin Avenue in both directions. This improvement would provide a safer and more efficient route for cyclists, encouraging sustainable transportation and promoting a more bike-friendly community.
Throughout our project, we recognize the importance of obeying engineering constraints while planning our infrastructure solutions by considering engineering criteria, protected territories, and sustainability. As the 2020 Bloomington Avenue sees roughly 4,650 vehicles daily, including 53 trucks, making a bike boulevard like 17th Street unfeasible. Additionally, East Phillips is on indigenous land, so we must consider potential impacts on the ecosystem and cultural sites. We also ensured ADA compliance and addressed stormwater management through green infrastructure, such as planting strips, to create a sustainable, community-focused design.
Our proposed location to focus our project efforts on is Bloomington Ave, from Franklin to Lake Street. Notably, Bloomington Avenue widens as it approaches Lake Street, with a road width of 60 feet from Franklin Ave to 24th, 70 feet from 24th to 26th, and 80 feet from 26th to Lake Street, providing an excellent opportunity to implement safer and more accessible bike infrastructure.
Here we have a proposed solution focused on a 60-foot wide road spanning from Franklin Avenue to 24th Street. On the top, we have what the current road looks like right now. This current road configuration has no room for greenery and is not bike-friendly features, making it less inviting and sustainable. Our redesign is to address these gaps. On the bottom, we have our proposed solution. The left side parking shoulder is removed to create space for bike lanes. This reduction has minimal impact as this shoulder experiences lower parking demand. Here, we introduce two 5-foot wide bike lanes, one for each direction, a 1-foot tactile strip to enhance accessibility for the visually impaired, and a 3-foot planting strip for the greenery, all of which are elevated above the roadway, providing a distinct separation from vehicle traffic.
Now, in the 70-foot wide road from 24th to 26th Street, the current road configuration is not so suitable or inviting. This time, our proposal incorporates the same features as the 60-foot wide road, however, with a wider tactile strip of 2 feet with a wider planter strip of 8 feet, allowing for larger vegetation. Currently, Bloomington Avenue between 26th Street and Lake Street spans 80 feet in width. Just like our previous slides, this current state does not prioritize cyclists.
For this 80-foot width, we are developing two redesign options, each tailored to different sections of Bloomington Ave based on the surrounding context. The first redesign retains parking on both sides and is ideal for areas with more commercial activity, where parking demand is higher. This option preserves parking while incorporating dedicated bike lanes and planting strips, ensuring a balanced approach to the needs of businesses and cyclists.
The second design removes parking on one side, freeing up space for a wider planting strip. This design is better suited for more residential areas where parking demand is lower, allowing us to prioritize greenery and provide a safer, more pedestrian and cyclist-friendly environment.
Our project will have a meaningful community impact. The positives to our project is better accessibility, increased employment opportunities, improved health benefits, and a cleaner environment. During the construction phase, however, the temporary road closures will impact the local community, businesses, and vehicles passing the corridor. To minimize the inconvenience, the construction will be initiated in phases. In order to avoid unintended consequences, we will consult with local organizations such as Phillips Neighborhood Clinic, American Indian Health Board, the American Indian Family Center, and community elders. Additionally, by hosting multiple community listening sessions and taking community surveys of community-specific needs and perspectives, this process will be key in ensuring we're encompassing a diverse range of community inputs. Parking areas will also be maintained in certain areas. Improvement of bike and pedestrian facilities can be achieved despite the different constraints, allowing the community to remain connected and thrive by providing economic growth opportunities for residents who are trying to find work within their nearby community.
Thank you all for taking the time to be here with us today and allowing us to present our final product. We hope this stirs new possibilities, sparks meaningful discussions, and brings a new perspective into how we reimagine construction in our Minnesota communities.
Thank you all. We have time for probably a couple questions or comments. Anybody in the room here have thoughts or questions for the group?
And then we can pass the mics around the students.
Thank you. I think it might be kind of an uninformed question, but what is the advantage of a roundabout compared to the lights?
Oh, well, I can answer that one. I won't throw that on the students because I used to teach transportation engineering. So the advantage of a roundabout is that you slow traffic. So it's considered one of many options for traffic calming, they call it. So people naturally drive slower. You also drastically reduce the level of serious injury or fatal crashes. So you actually do have a slight increase in overall crashes, but you don't have T-bone crashes anymore. You very much have like glancing side blows. And so you might have slightly more accidents overall, but they are of much reduced severity. And then you have just slower traffic in the neighborhood generally. It also can help with traffic flow depending on the specific situation that you have. But I know people hate them.
Elena, do we have any comments or questions on the live stream? No? Okay. Joe?
I'm a college administrator and faculty member, and I loved this. Congratulations on all this hard work and on the opportunity to share your findings with outside the institution. I noticed happily that all of the projects involved elements of community input and conversation. I wondered how much opportunity you had to engage in that as part of this process. And I just also wanted to say it kind of belongs in both the benefit and the unintended consequences, because all of these beautiful plans will look so different once you invite the community in. So I just wondered what your thinking is about the process and the impact on the designs that you have come up with.
I can only speak with our group, but we really strived in our research project process to look at a lot of different sources that had had already gone into the community to take in input. So, we saw quotes, we saw like survey results. So I would say we did, in our best way, try and incorporate as much as possible. We also went into the community and looked at the way that community members were operating at different hours and, what the struggles were and whatnot. So that also helped a lot.
Yeah, to echo what Shrija was saying, I would say we did the same. I personally work in the area that we were talking about. So, and I work with organizations that that push equity around certain things, not necessarily like transportation, but the other things that I had mentioned, like substance use, affordable housing, things of that nature. And while I was working, I guess I talked to the people that are in the community and things of that nature, and just kind of get their input. And a lot of it was really interesting because sometimes you wouldn't necessarily think that transportation is a really big factor to some people when it really is, and how a lot of these designs and these constraints are really affecting them on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, I definitely agree with you, though. I think that having that component of that qualitative conversation and things of that nature is really, really good and essential to any of these designs and the projects and the proposals that we made. So yeah.
Well, thank you all very much. We are out of time. You have done a lot of great work, and we really appreciate that. Next Sunday, we will welcome guests from Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light and Leech Lake Tribal College, talking about their work for the upcoming legislative session on protecting water and wild rice harvesting in Minnesota. We look forward to seeing you then.